Welcome to the Intake Podcast. We are your hosts, Carson Miller and Travelle McManus, and this is the podcast where we dive into the media shaping our world today.
And on today's episode, we're going to be doing a deep dive in Superman. Carson is the MVP. I don't know what all loopholes you had to go through, but we got like a VIP access to like a 2-day early release to Superman. So we actually got to see it on Tuesday when it's coming out on Thursday, which is really cool. Never had an experience like that before. Last week I got to see F1 a day early, but to see such a highly anticipated movie 2 days early, really cool. Felt like a movie reviewer having that experience. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
And so in this deep dive, we are going to try our best to not spend a lot of time on things that will be considered spoilers. But as we dive into it, there are probably going to be plot points and things revealed that would be best for a listening audience that have already seen the movie. And we both can attest and say that this is a movie that you want to experience first before you get anyone else's like opinions on it. So definitely go, pause, bookmark it, go to the theaters, watch it, bring a friend, and then come back and join in on the conversation.
Yep. There's a couple things that I would consider big spoilers, and we probably will talk about those towards the end. Everything else would probably be considered minor spoilers or a plot point, which if you care about those things, you know to stay away. So
Yes.
You've been well warned, I would say. And yeah, the experience of getting to go a few days early was pretty cool. I will say that we missed the opening message from James Gunn and the cast. The audio just did not work for that part, and that was rather disappointing, to say the least. And but it was a really cool experience. Honestly, the theater was not full, which was a little concerning to me. I don't know how. I mean, there were quite a few steps to be able to get the tickets. They weren't impossible steps, but you did have to go to like 3 different websites to be able to navigate through. So that may have been part of the problem. It was a partnership with Amazon Prime. So you had to go to Fandango and then log into your Prime account and then purchase the tickets. And then there's a couple steps to go through, and to connect your Fandango account with your Prime account, especially if you're not the primary account holder, would be a little difficult. So it was kind of a weird way to do it. However,
it also probably wasn't as well, because I did not know that this was a thing until you text me. So I also think that maybe some of the advertisement around it wasn't there. Like, because I posted a picture on Instagram of like that early access screen, and I had a lot of people messaging me, how did you, like, they thought, oh, with your podcast you got some kind of VIP access. I'm like, no, hold your brakes. We're not there just yet.
We're not that cool.
But yeah, like a lot of people did not know, like, if you have an Amazon Prime account, you were just as qualified as I am to be here tonight. So it might have been a combination of both. I think Thursday night will probably be the best. Like, some of our friends that are going Thursday night, I'll definitely reach out to them to see like how their experience was, because I think that'll probably be the best way to kind of assess what direction this movie is going to go box office wise. Because from what I've heard, the money is there, and like pre-order sales and pre-order ticket sales. So
yeah, we're gonna have to wait to find out. There was limited trailers. There was no Cinemark advertising before. There was it was a limited amount of things before the movie, which was pretty cool, because they've been doing, the normal pre-show stuff with advertisements and Maria Menounos and all that sort of stuff. And then you get like 2 trailers, then you get a commercial for like a car or something. Then you get 2 more trailers, then you get a little advertisement for Cinemark, 1 more trailer, and then like the movie theaters like intro package, and then the movie. And this was just like 4 trailers, nothing else, and you got to go into it. So that was a positive experience for both of us, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
So Superman, if you don't know, Superman is coming out on Thursday, July 10th. Well, July 11th, but Thursday screenings are July 10th. And it is directed by James Gunn. Now, for those that don't know, James Gunn directed all 3 Guardians of the Galaxy movies for Marvel, and then post Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, he got brought over to DC Studios at Warner Brothers to head up the entire DC cinematic universe. So the DCU. We have the MCU. It's been around for 17 years now, quite a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And he was there, created three of my favorite movies in the MCU,
Yep.
and now is over at DC creating things for them. Prior to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, he also made another movie for DC, The Suicide Squad, which was a semi reboot, semi continuation,
Sequel. Yeah.
sequel. It was kind of a mess. And so he has been brought in to clean up all the DC movies that have come before are now gone except for the Batman. And moving forward, it is this new universe which he is bringing to us in Superman. And so James Gunn wrote the movie along with Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, and it stars David Cornsweet as Superman, Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor, and Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane. Those are our three main characters in the movie. I think that's a classic Superman trio right there. Oftentimes, Lex uses Lois kind of as a pawn in his fight with Superman. And we also get introduced to a couple other cool characters along the way in this movie, because this is setting up this brand new universe and this brand new world for the DC characters. And so we are also introduced to the Justice Gang, which has Guy Gardner's Green Lantern, Hawk Girl, and Mr. Terrific as the three members of this super team. There are also other beings known as metahumans in this world. It's a little bit different than an X-Men. I think they're just using metahumans as a term for superpowered beings. And we also get introduced to Crypto, the super dog, which is awesome. I think lots of people were nervous when we found out that Crypto was going to be in the movie, because he is not he is a part of Superman's lore, but typically a sillier part of Superman's history in the comics. And so it very much told everybody, this is a Silver Age Superman. This is not the early beginnings where it's just him and he's the only superpowered being. And it's not the newer versions of Superman where there's just a lot more convolutedness about his story and everything. This is classic Superman from the comics, probably what we grew up with in the animated series of Justice League and Superman and things like that. And so we get this Silver Age Superman. And just kind of as a brief summary of the movie, this takes place 33 years after Superman landed on Earth, and we are introduced to Superman 3 years into his Superman career. So he is still kind of new at this, and you kind of see that in some of his brashness and decision making. And for the first time, he is defeated in battle. That is within the first 2 minutes of the movie. It says he's defeated for the first time in battle after 3 years. And so this normal day for Superman quickly turns dark as we see Lex Luthor start to implement a plan that he's been developing for years to defeat Superman. It involves political maneuvers, questionable science, and some personal attacks, and this altercation with Lex takes Superman to the brink with himself and those he loves. So Superman, with the help of the Justice Gang and the Daily Planet, take on Lex and try to restore hope for humanity. And I think that sums up the movie pretty well, and
Yep.
I would love to get your initial thoughts. We talked a little bit on the way home last night,
Yes.
but almost 24 hours later, how are you feeling about it? And then we'll dig into some of the details of this movie.
I mean, I enjoyed it. I loved it. I am someone who isn't the biggest Superman fan. I have just never really enjoyed watching Superman or learning more about him. And this movie made me grow to love him, to enjoy the story that they had to tell. It wasn't a perfect story, but comparing it to the other DCU properties, it is focused, it is simple, it doesn't try to be anything other than what it's meant to be. And I just really appreciate that. We both had moments where we bust out laughing at different things, and the audience
Yeah.
was very engaged. Even though it was a smaller audience, it was a very engaged audience. Like, they were very much laughing, saying things. There were like some applause at certain points, and so it was a movie that could move people. It definitely had James Gunn's personal touch to it, where he likes to play on heartstrings, and he likes to create these moments of hope and happiness that you don't normally get in a superhero movie, where it's more so focused on strength and might. And so it was interesting because, I mean, I feel like if that is no better representation of Superman, it is that, just pure strength, pure might, this savior complex. We got a very humanizing Superman, someone that
Yes.
can be relatable, someone that can be beatable, which is something we can talk about a little bit more here later. And that just made for a more interesting story that I really enjoyed. Is it 24 hours now later? Is it where I think the DCU, like, I don't know, like, the execution of what the DCU is going to look like is still kind of up in the air. So it's really hard to tell based on this movie alone if the execution of it did what it needed to do. And I think the box office might play a kind of a huge, and I hate that that's what it might come down to, but that's, at the end of the day, they make these movies to put butts in seats. And so that's going to be a big determination of like what direction they go, how are they going to go about executing on these things, because it didn't really do anything to set like a foundation that like an Iron Man did, but it did still give us a good story, and that's in itself worth applauding.
Right. I think it set a different foundation than Iron Man. I feel like Iron Man set Iron Man as the foundation. The character, Tony Stark, was the foundation. This Superman movie builds the foundation for the world Superman exists in. I'm not sure it makes Superman the foundation of the DCEU. I think that's the difference there, because there is a significant portion of this movie that is spent world building and letting us know where we're at in this world, because it is not a world grounded in our reality. It is a fantastical world that has lots of superpowered beings already in it that world already knows and we're learning about for the first time. And Superman is one of those there. He is the most powerful and the most unique because he is an alien, and that is a key theme of the movie. And so he is unique in this world, but it is a different world than our own. And so James Gunn spends quite a bit of time trying to get us up to speed. And that's probably one of the weaker points of the movie, because overall I loved it. I loved the message of hope. I loved this version of Superman is hopeful. He smiles more. This is not your Zack Snyder, Henry Cavill, Man of Steel Superman, where it's a little bit down and dour, and this is gritty and real, which had its place. I think that Man of Steel is a great science fiction movie. It's even a good commentary on religion and messiah figures. So it has value to it, but it's not a great Superman movie when we think about Superman being this Boy Scout and rescuing the kitten from the tree, but also being able to take on the universe's most powerful beings. And so I feel like James Gunn threaded that needle with Superman really well. He got really close on balancing the world building and the Superman part. And in fact, in my opinion, I think he cut it a little bit short. If we had an extra 10 to 15 minutes where we got a little bit more character building as opposed to just world building, I think it would have probably solidified it better. And but it still comes out where I had a good time at the theater. I laughed and I was intrigued. I loved so many of the visuals. There's just things that could have come straight off of a comic book page. It is very much a comic book movie. We get lots of superhero movies. They're not always comic book movies. This is a comic book movie. So if you enjoy looking at different panels within a comic book, I think our friend Mark is going to enjoy it just for that value of, wow, that's straight out of a comic book page. That there's a lot of value there. Another movie that did that for me was Spider-Man Far From Home, where there's just some visuals in there that are just phenomenal comic images. And so overall, really enjoyed it. It definitely has a few weaknesses, which I've hit on a few of those. But how did you feel about opening up the movie? And this is literally the first 2 minutes of the movie is some text on the screen, getting us up to speed, saying 3 centuries ago, metahumans came to the earth. 30 years ago or 33 years ago, Superman or a baby landed in Kansas and was raised by Ma and Pa Kent. 3 years ago, Superman announced himself to the world and started saving people. 3 months ago, such and such happened. I can't remember what it was. 3 days ago, 3 hours ago, 3 minutes ago, this is what happens. That was a very interesting way to start the movie. How did you feel about that?
That was a very interesting, and it does kind of load a lot. It threw a lot at you, and it took about 10-15 minutes for me to be able, and that's probably one of my big desires for wanting to watch this movie again, is because I kind of was trying to play catch up those first 10 minutes, because there was, some political implications in there, and you didn't know how important that was to the story. So you're trying to figure out the politics of what's happening, how, what stage of Superman's life are we actually getting? Because we know he's 3 years in, but what does 3 years in look like for Superman? It's like, we found out quickly he has crypto, he has his home base. We know that he's already started his double life as Clark Kent. But seeing that, and just it gets thrown at you really quick. You already have Lex Luthor and his Enterprise, and you're introduced to 2 metahumans all within 10 minutes. It is just thrown at you. And I do like, and I do appreciate this new era of superhero movies, of stories that we've seen before, where they're just you saw it with Spider-Man, the newest Spider-Man, you saw it with the Batman, and now you're seeing it with the Superman, where it's we're skipping the origin story, we're skipping he got bit by a spider, his parents died, he crashed on planet, and we're going straight into, this is who your superhero is, and these are the challenges that they're facing currently. And I do like that, but this was the fastest I've ever seen it, and I think that I think it did a good job of catching us up by that 15-minute mark. But that first 15 minutes, as fights were breaking out, politics was being discussed, crypto's going crazy, you're just kind of I'm just kind of where, and as someone who doesn't know Superman super well, I'm just gonna let the story kind of form itself in front of me, and I'll catch up later.
Yeah. And I agree. I think it was a jarring first 15 minutes because I knew that we were going to be thrown into this world. I didn't know the political part of this movie is a lot to keep up with, because they're 2 countries that don't exist in our world.
Yes.
And so you have a lack of context there that you're trying to keep up with while you're trying to figure out, oh, there's a Green Lantern. Oh, there's Hawkgirl. Have we had a Hawkgirl before? I can't remember. Okay, well, that's cool. Oh, yeah, there's this guy named Mr. Terrific. What does he do? You're trying to keep up with that and learn what this country of Baravia is, and the other country, which I can't.
No, I can't. Yeah, no.
I can't even tell you what the name was.
Nope.
And it's important to the movie. I thought it starts with a J.
Maybe
that's where we're at, and they're important to the plot of the movie. They really are. And so it is a little jarring at first. I think when I step back and look at the movie as a whole, I think there's 4 big fights. You have the big fight at the beginning where we're getting thrown into the world, and I liked that one, and I thought that was an okay way to introduce the movie and introduce us to this world. The end fight, I think, was also good. There's 2 in the middle, one with a monster and one in something called a pocket universe.
Pocket universe.
I'm not going to try to explain or even try to figure out what that is, but they're there, and I think we could have dropped one of those. Those plot points can still be there. But I think if you drop one of the fights and allow for a little bit more character development, my biggest complaint coming out of the movie to you was that I couldn't hear Superman's voice in my head. We got a lot of him fighting. We got a lot of him interacting with Lois and Lex, but there wasn't a whole lot of him interacting with other characters with dialogue. And I want to walk out hearing his voice, not just seeing his actions. I like seeing his actions, but if I could have seen a little bit more about his relationship with people, then some of the one-liners or some of the jokes or the goody two-shoes Superman lines, I think would have landed a little bit better for me. And I could have done without one of the fights, because by the time we entered the 3rd act, I was like, whoa, slow down. I'm not ready for this to be over. I want to get to know Superman a little bit more, or get to know Clark a little bit more, because we don't get a lot of Clark Kent in this movie.
We get maybe 5-6 minutes with Clark. It is very short, and it does go to there's multiple, and that is an interesting point of the fights, because for me it was just, can we not get a superhero movie without being able to just focus on our superhero? I was discouraged in the trailers, not as much discouraged in the movie, but still just annoyed by the fact that we still had to have the Justice Gang. We still had to have other heroes that kind of take up some space. I mean, we get a whole fight sequence with Mr. Terrific that was like 5 minutes long, and it was cool. I mean, it was one of my favorite sequences. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was well choreographed, like really funny, has like just humorous. It felt like that final act in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. So I really like that. And
Yeah.
so, but when we're talking about Superman, and yes, with him being such a charismatic Superman, I mean, when he like, hey, look at me, just there's so many moments where he's just so charming. And
Right.
I could have gotten 10, 15 more moments like that. And there's
Yep.
moments with the fights, and then there's moments with other characters that we could have kind of played and moved around to get more of him, whether that's him as Clark Kent or him just being Superman, interacting like you said,
Right.
with other people besides the main character, like the main players. That would have been good, because also the movie is only 2 hours and 9 minutes. I know we'll kind of talk about that a little bit later, but that we can, as someone who likes short movies, we could have put that at 2:30, 2:20, 2:30, just added 20 more minutes of just meaningful dialogue that could have gotten us to a point of this is our Superman. Because we got that in some ways, but we didn't get that in the ways that we're familiar with, where it's like, whether that's in like the crazy way, like the tough way, or in like the Boy Scout way.
Right. I think we lack a relationship with him as the audience. We learned a lot about him. We saw him do a lot of things, but I don't feel like we know him. The biggest feeling I have walking out of the movie is I liked it, but yet I feel unsatisfied because I don't feel like I truly know him yet. And I want more of him, because James Gunn did such a good job of threading that needle of the almighty, but also almost all good. Superman does make mistakes, but this very altruistic version of Superman, and we get to see that and we get to learn about him. But I still feel, and David Cornsweet, I think he does a really good job of portraying him. Like, I want him to be my Superman. Like, I want more of him. Put him in another movie next week, and I'm gonna go watch him be Superman still. Like, he was that good in the role. I just wanted to spend a little bit more time with him, not fighting. And that's my biggest critique of the movie. Because his relationship with Lois is fantastic. Rachel Brosnahan is a great Lois Lane. She is strong, and she's a great reporter, but she also does have this softness where she opens up to Superman a little bit, and you get to see and feel that. And their chemistry was great. They're in an interesting point in the relationship 3 months in, and I think that's a really fun place to meet them, and I want more of that relationship. And so I loved getting to see that part of Superman, even because in their relationship at this time, she knows he's Superman, and you can see that he's not Clark Kent in those moments with her, and he's not Superman in those moments with her. He is both of them in those moments with her, and those were the moments I wanted more of, is getting to see him a little bit more relaxed, not having to defend something and not having to pretend something as Clark Kent, but to just be him. And I feel like if we had more of those moments, that would have been good, because the villain is great. I would love to hear your thoughts on Lex. As a not a big Superman fan, Lex is the big bad. He's the Joker for Superman. How do you feel about Lex?
I loved him. I think a superhero movie is made and broken by their villains, and I think that they got him down. I think it was way more expansive. His abilities, I knew very little about Lex Luthor, so his ability to really get into some crazy, unethical scientific projects was beyond my understanding of what he could accomplish, and it makes sense that you almost have to have that ability as someone that's going up against Superman. And so I really enjoyed that, and he has some really like powerful dialogues, like some moments where I really question like how much of a villain is. I mean, he's obviously a villain, he's obviously with evil intentions, but the third act, when he kind of just comes out and said like, the reason why I despise you, Superman, is because you are a constant reminder of how weak I am. And I really enjoy hearing that.
Right.
Like, just
Yeah.
that back and forth of like, like you cause fear because of your strength, and I want that strength. And so, yeah, it was good. There was some, like the black hole thing, the pocket dimension, that kind of got a
Yeah.
little wonky. I think that is when we get into the comic book part of it. And that can, for some people, that's going to be really cool. That's going to be really fun to see and watch.
Yeah.
But for other people, it's like, this is really a lot. Like, this is a kind of a lot
Yeah.
to take in. You have Metropolis just being ripped to two, and we're just kind of like, okay, so that's happening, and he's in control of that. And so there were parts of it that was just a little,
It's a little fantastical.
fantastical.
Pushes the edge of sci-fi into fantasy.
Yes.
Where, okay, you've pushed me beyond my suspension of belief just a little bit to where, okay, now you're asking me to fully get on board with the assumptions we have to make about this world to believe that this is happening.
Yes. And I think
we move beyond reality.
Yes, and I think going back to what you're saying about like the world, but I do think that is the world that James Gunn is trying to put us in. Because another thing too of like, you would, like he released a kaiju, like a giant monster on the city, and to everyone there, it's a normal Tuesday afternoon. Like, they're going about their day. I mean, yes, people are trying to move. More people are trying to take photos of the confrontation. They are trying to run away. And I do think that when you start getting into like the Marvel and DCU universe of it all, I am curious to see what this fantastical world that we are called to be brought into is going to look at, where like MCU was pretty good about trying to bring in real world, current day, almost to a point where we felt like we were living in a MCU. The way that people would react to tragedy, the way that people would react to this world was very similar to how we reacted and how we saw the world. And that was good for us. It was easier for us to connect with that. Where there were moments like that, moments where, they were fighting. It was like this giant jellyfish on the screen, and Lois and Superman having like a normal conversation. Like, for him, I'm like, I understand that. But for her, it's like, that couldn't be us. That couldn't be me.
No. I was distracted by it. In that scene, I love that scene, but I was distracted by that. If that's just gone, I'm a little bit more invested with her, because I'm like, the hardcore fan part of me is going, okay, what is that, and who's fighting? Like, why is he not, like, I'm going through all these things, and I just want to be paying attention to their relationship at that moment. And I love that you said that in the MCU, for the most part, we get reactions that are akin to our own. And in this world, they were reacting differently. And I do feel like that may have also played into that unsatisfactory feeling of, okay, I'm having to catch up. I'm having to get on board with that, and don't feel like I am participating in building a relationship with Superman the same way the people in that world are building a relationship with Superman.
Yes. And so, yeah, because even like the politics of it all, it was just very different than how we would see like that type of like, foreign relations and that type of politics, and like, the promises that were given to Lex Luthor. Like, I just think there was, like there would be way more nuance to that. And, a MCU world and our world, where here it's just kind of like, you just kind of roll with it, like even like Lex Luthor and his, like, I didn't think he would have like a game. I mean, he had like 20 people on his payroll just helping him beat up Superman. Like, and it was just like a thing. Like, they're high-fiving, they're having a good old, like, this is a normal day at work for them, where like, I'm not used to that type of comic book fantastical approach to like a world with superheroes. And so,
it definitely separates it, and I think that can be an advantage for this new universe that's being kicked off by this movie. But it is a little jarring, and I loved Lex Luthor. I thought it was interesting that they went with Luthor Corps instead of LexCorp. That's an interesting variation on that. I'm sure it has some sort of roots in the comics, but historically we've seen LexCorp or LexCorp or something along those lines. At least I think we do. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I did not do any research. It's just my natural instinct was, oh, it's Luthor instead of Lex.
I didn't catch that at all. I mean, so. And
I loved Crypto. Crypto was great. He plays a key part in the movie. He really does. And it does help humanize Superman a little bit to have him have a dog. And We learn more about that later in the movie, but
Hmm.
having that relationship there does allow us to connect with Superman in a way that we haven't previously. You can Crypto does not exist in Henry Cavill's Man of Steel. Like that
No, it
doesn't
just doesn't
work.
work. It does not work one
The
bit.
robots in the Fortress of Solitude don't work. There's lots of those things that just don't work in other variations, and in this one it really did. Although we got a Superman that we were shown being beaten a lot, and for some, I think that's going to be a problem. When I think about it, I think that it is hard to make Superman relatable because he's so powerful. So Crypto
Hmm.
does that. Seeing him get beaten by some of the anti-heroes and villains in this movie helps with that.
Yeah.
But I still think he's the strongest being in this universe. We just didn't He's early enough that he's not quite sure of the full extent of what he can do, and I think that the other villain or the other metahumans in this world are just that powerful that they can walk up and stand with Superman for a little bit. They maybe can't hang the whole time, but they are there's real threats to him, and I
Yes.
think that's an interesting take that I think some people are going to have trouble getting on board with.
And we talked about this last night, and I did do some a little bit digging on it, but yeah, like people are already kind of having problems with that even before the movie came out because of
Mm,
the trailer. One of the very
mm-hmm,
first trailers of Superman, you had that moment where he kind of lost trust, and you had this pedestrian throw a can at him, and he flinches, and
mm-hmm.
people were really upset about that, really upset about it, like to the point where they were pretty almost addressing it without addressing it. And that was just like it was in reviews, it was in articles, like it was, and I had no idea. Like I was like, oh, I mean, people are coming at him. A can hits my head, I'll flinch too. And then they fixed it, and seeing him getting hit in the head with a hard object and just not budging, it not phasing him, does bring me
Mm,
back to like, okay, I get it now, because this is supposed to be the Man of Steel. This is supposed to be someone who is just indestructible, and he was very destructible. I mean, he was in a
mm.
lot of dire situations. More
Yes.
so, there was more time in this movie that he was being overpowered and he was overpowering.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so,
It's an
and
interesting choice for
and
sure.
that is a very interesting choice, because that's just not the Superman that I'm familiar with. I think
Mm-mm.
maybe that is how James feels like he can bridge the gap for maybe people like me who have always found that aspect. It's not that I wanted a Superman that was going to just get beaten up a lot. It was just
Mm-hmm.
the generic, like just how generic it was of him being able
Right.
to fly, have super strength, some psi abilities with his breath and lasers, but for the most part, he can punch and fly, and nothing can really hurt him. And so, sup
Mm-hmm.
kryptonite and that whole
Right.
plot. But yeah, so yeah, it was very. I'm very curious to hear the range of feelings around how Superman was portrayed, as far as his powers and
Mm-hmm.
what he was capable of doing, what he wasn't capable of doing, and how he handled all those different fights that he was in.
Right. Yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting to see how that carries forward in the rest of the universe. The next movie we're getting is Supergirl, so I don't know if we should anticipate seeing Superman in that or not. But that's the next movie that's coming up. I think it's time for us to get into the two biggest spoilers. So if you've gone this far and you were like, "Man, okay, that was enough for me," you can tune out now. But there are two big reveals in this movie. The first being that the message from Superman's parents, that is the classic Jor-El and Laura-El from Krypton right before their planet explodes, telling him their hope for him as he grows up as an alien here on Earth. And it is traditionally a message of hope. And that's what we are led to believe. That is what Superman is believing through the first half of the movie, maybe the first third of the movie. And through magic science, Lex Luthor is able to salvage the second half of the message, which was damaged when it came to Earth with Superman, and play it for the whole world. And it is revealed that his Kryptonian parents' original intent was not only to bring hope and protect the Earth and humanity, but to rule over them and to spread his seed as far as it would go to repopulate and essentially create a new Krypton through him having as many children as possible. And that is not the message that Superman knew or thought he knew, and the world learns it and turns it against him. So that was a pretty stark departure from 90% of Superman in movies and in comics,
Yes.
to have that be the case. So which was another interesting choice. I'm not upset by it. I think it's an interesting choice, but I understand that that's probably a more likely scenario than the benevolence that is traditionally attributed to his parents of, we just want you to go be hopeful and protect everybody. No, it's more likely they would send something off planet if their planet is dying to repopulate and create something new. That is
Yeah.
a more likely story. So I'm not upset by it. It's a departure from the traditional Superman story.
Yes, because I do think, I mean, my favorite scene from Man of Steel was the hour and a half mark where we finally get him in his Superman suit, and he finally kind of gets that purpose given to him by his father when he discovers the ship that he came in, and his father kind of setting the standard of, this symbol means hope, what that looks like, what it means to carry this symbol, and you need to carry it out. You are given powers that are going to be beyond these people's imaginations. Use that for good. And so to have that be, a focal point in Man of Steel, and a part that I really, really did like, and connecting me to the Henry Cavill Superman, you now have this, and they don't really you get that information, and then it is it's still a thought, it's still something that troubles Superman, but it's never really discussed anymore. Like, it's not really mentioned, and it even kind of leaves a taste in your mouth that it's just something that we're just going to move past from, or even be kind of resentful of, because of at the beginning of the movie, you saw that he wanted to hear the words of his parents, and that meant his biological parents, something that the robots would play for him on repeat. And then at the end of the movie, that was his birth parents, and the moments that he spent in Smallville with,
his
adopted parents.
Yeah.
And his life in Kansas. And so,
Right.
And just not really going back to that. And so that was interesting. That's another one where I'm like, okay, time to hear what the Superman experts are going to have to say about that, because I really don't have a take on it, but I just thought it was interesting. The whole time I thought it was, most of the movie I thought it was corrupted. Like, I thought, oh, Lex Luthor took this, changed it.
Right.
But when both sides were saying this is what the message said, it was like, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's real, and I think it led to a very inspiring and sweet moment with Ma and Pa Kent back in Kansas, and I loved that part of the movie.
Yes.
I wanted a little bit more out of that part of the movie, because he can be balanced again. He can be holding both Clark and Superman at the same time, and Lois is there with him. And to be honest, a little bit of parents meeting the girlfriend type thing, like that could have been some more story development there,
She
to
dropped
where
him
I
off and dipped
feel.
out.
Yeah, she's like, oh, I gotta take a work call. See you later. And I want a little bit more time there too. And so, but it really, I don't mind the shift from him putting all of his hope with his birth parents, but then shifting it to the adopted parents. I think that's actually a really sweet story, and a very emotional story. It's probably the most emotional part of the movie for me. The rest of the movie, I didn't have a whole lot of emotion towards. Felt a little bit when Superman and Lois were having their relationship on screen, and with Ma and Pa Kent, but I wanted a few more of those moments in the movie.
I mean,
for sure.
because I would have wanted more moments with the parents to be, because I mean, even like the mom was kind of like just a comedy point, she was used more of a comedy device than she was anything meaningful, and the dad kind of played that. And with the Smallville crowd, I just think it would have. I was surprised with how little we got of that. And that dialogue with his dad was so special and so meaningful, and I loved it. It's not parents' jobs to tell their children who they're going to be. It's our job to give them the tools to screw up on their own. And I just, And you saw how that just resonated with him, and that
Right.
completely shifted how he saw his situation, how he saw the story that was being put in front of him. And so just, yeah, like kind of what we keep going back to, more of that,
More
more
of
of
that.
that. Instead of, yeah, just more of that would have been really good for us to for it to have made sense, because when
Hmm.
they displayed his memories with his parents, I was like, that's sweet. I do like that, but that just kind of came left field for me, because I don't,
Mm.
like we didn't really even focus on what his previous parents said all too much, and the weight of,
Right.
or the reasoning or the weight behind why they gave that
Right.
message. And we also didn't really get to see a ton of meaningful interactions. We had that
Mm.
very short, really like 2-line conversation with his dad, and his mom just being a boomer and not knowing how to work, her phone, calling the TV, the box. You need to see what's on the box. And I knew it. I was like, oh, the TV. Okay. So,
Yeah.
just, and then, yeah, comparing that to like Men of Steel, where we got a ton of interactions with his
Hmm.
dad, even before he passed. And then his mom carrying through not just that movie, but like Batman versus Superman and yada, yada, yada. Like, there was just a lot there that
Yep.
we just did not,
Yeah.
that could have just been easy to get, but we just didn't get
Yeah.
it.
We just didn't get it. Well, that was one of the two big reveals. The second reveal was who Ultraman was. So the main physical nemesis of Superman in this movie is Ultraman, and he has a mask on the whole movie and is a henchman, metahuman for Lex Luthor, who is the brains of this operation. And it is revealed at the end that Ultraman, when the mask is revealed, is a clone of Superman. So a version of Bizarro, who is a cloned, kind of dumb version of Superman in the comics and in the TV shows and everything, which means he can stand toe to toe physically with Superman, but the cloning process didn't work super well, and he cannot keep up with Superman mentally, let alone Lex Luthor mentally. And so Lex is speaking into an earpiece for him and giving him instructions on how to fight. And they are controlling Bizarro that way, which makes a little bit more sense on why the character at the beginning of the movie, Ultraman, was able to beat up Superman so much, was because it was a version of himself. And so I feel like that made that the a positive of the movie was that story, Lex's plan from beginning to end being shown and being so complicated in the middle, but you understand it at the end of it, the political maneuvers, you understand the science, you understand the emotional attacks on Superman, all connect together to lead to this moment of him being able to beat him with himself. And that is David Cornsweet, I think, played both of these guys very well. Even though Bizarro doesn't really speak a whole lot, if at all, you can see the emotions on his face and Superman's reactions. And being in a year where we have Sinners, with Michael Jordan playing two roles, and that being incredible, if we didn't have that, this might be one of the best dual role movies that we've had. Even though it was very brief, it was very well done to where there was none of the traditional tricks being used. You were never confused about it. It was perfectly done. Sinners was just a whole different level, and we've talked plenty about that. But it's interesting that we get
Yes.
two of these in the same thing, and I think that's probably the biggest reveal of the movie, and it all kind of clicked into place with that information. I don't know,
Hmm.
as I'm not a huge Superman fan, you were like, oh, I just thought it was a clone, but
Yep.
I'm and maybe I'm assuming wrong that it is a Bizarro character, but I think that's the only option because that's never been done before in a live action movie.
Yeah. I mean,
I think.
yeah. I
Again,
mean, but
I'm also not a Superman expert. I feel I just know enough to be dangerous,
And
you
I
know.
imagine, I think there were some reactions in this part where there was the great reveal that led me to believe that people there who know Superman, know the story, knew
Hmm.
that this was something important. I just assume, everything that's happening, there's some super comic book reference to
Right.
it, but just going off that assumption, not so much knowing for sure, of being able to say, yeah, like I know what's happening here. And so, but yeah, I mean, it made sense, and I just thought less of the reveal of it being him, but just the way that they used him.
Mm.
I mean, like the Lex Luthor calling out the commands and like
Yep.
acting as if, because it is hard. It is it is interesting for Superman's biggest villain, or in this in general, to be Lex Luthor, someone who does not have any powers, to still show a level of strength that can match Superman. And I think in that fight specifically, with him giving the commands that like Z5, Z, and him just punching down as the like that back and forth between him taking those actions and commanding it. It was just like amazing choreography, really well done, because you saw the lack of emotion that the clone Superman had, and just how really of a shell of himself he was, as Lex Luthor said he was in that moment, and how much weight that that Superman, our Superman, was having to fight himself, being overpowered like that, being lasered in the face, being beaten down like that, and having to overcome that. So so not understanding what was happening, I just still thought there was so much that was just really cool about that moment. That was just fun to watch.
Yeah, you didn't need to know that it was a version of Bizarro.
Yeah,
you really didn't. It's just more of it's one of those characters that you never really thought they'd bring to screen, because he's such a limited character in a lot of ways, because he only has strength to bring. Other than that, he kind of bumbles around, like he's not the best Superman villain. And so to bring him in, I think was pretty smart and pretty interesting that they chose to go that route as kind of a henchman for Lex. So overall, I think it's how did you feel about David Cornsweet as Superman? How did you feel his performance was? What did you think about, the way he delivered the lines? Just kind of those things, his acting when it comes to the Superman character. What did you think about him?
I think he is very charming, and I think that's also that has to be a key aspect of Superman. Is he's just charming. The 5 minutes that he was Clark Kent were just like very, like, he just looked good in glasses. He just looked good in that environment, just being clumsy, being a klutz, just kind of getting around, trying to navigate this dual lifestyle. There were some lines. There were some. I mean, like the people are going to die. Like that conversation that he had with Lois, where he's like yelling, "People are going to die." It could have been a little bit more convincing. It could have been a little bit more, like I can understand like his frustration. But I don't feel like they were masking him in any kind of way. It was just, it's hard to assess him as an actor in this role, because there wasn't as much acting as there was punching, saving, flying. Like this was, I mean, it was a very action packed, for it to be 2 hours long. There was just a lot of fights happening, and it was great, and they were all choreographed. Like the choreography for all of them were amazing, the visual effects for all of them. I love the color palette for it, but that took us away from really being able to assess him as like a Robert Downey Jr. to Tony Stark type actor, where like Lois, because she doesn't have all of her sequences are dialogue, she worked. Lex Luthor, same thing, he worked. Some of the other players, like the Justice Gang, Mr. Terrific worked for me, and and out of the 3, we get more interactions with him. I mean, he has his own fighting sequence, and I loved it. So it's a toss up with them, like Hawk Girl, Green Lantern.
I liked Green Lantern. I was concerned that haircut on Nathan Fillion was not going to work, but it did. It fit who his character was.
Yes.
And I agree. Again, more dialogue would have helped with Superman and David Cornsweet's performance. That where he got frustrated with Lois and was like, people were going to die. That was one of the more convincing things to me. Sometimes the Boy Scout lines of, golly, I can be a jerk sometimes. Some of those didn't land with me quite as well. But again, I think that's because I wasn't sure if it's hard to, we didn't have a lot of dialogue, so it just kind of came out, and you were like, oh, that was a line there.
Because you didn't know, because you didn't know what the, like,
what he normally does. Is that just generally how he talks? Or is this one line that was thrown in there because that's how Superman is?
Well, because I was also still trying to figure out the political conflicts that was taking place. It was like, where is this happening where people are going to die? Or like, where are you evaluating like the lives that you are trying to, is it just that is people in general, so you just don't want to see people dying? Because that's a very to say that takes us to a whole nother conversation beyond just
Right.
saving people from war, saving people in general. And there's people dying every day. Like, what was so specific about this confrontation with
Right.
two countries that, yeah, like you said, that are not real, that we know nothing about. We don't know who's the bad
Right.
guy. I mean, we kind of assume who the bad and good guy is, but they tried to make it, Lewis and her interviewing, tried to make it a little bit more gray than what it was. Like,
Right.
both of these countries have troubling pasts. How did you
Yep.
choose to go about fighting it in this angle, in this direction, without permission, yada, yada, yada? And so when he got to that conclusion, if we had maybe had more time to understand his philosophy of how he
Right.
wants to use his power, it would have stuck a little bit more, but it felt abrupt. And that's why I was like, oh, okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I get the reason. I
I
support the
think
reason,
I
but
think that is his philosophy. I think Lois is calling him on it of you can't just choose everybody. And he's like, yes, I can. And again, that's a hard moral stand. I mean, I think it's ideal, but I think it's a hard moral stance to take when there is so much gray, and that's what Lois was presenting. And I think there was his character growth throughout the movie. I think in the next movie, I think we'll see that he has grown from their relationship talking about that and his experience as Superman having to make those type of decisions in that way. I got a lot of Jim Halpert vibes from Superman in this movie. From The Office, there's just times he looked at the camera, like he didn't look at the camera because he's not breaking the fourth wall, but like the camera was right in front of him, and he's kind of looking at it, and he kind of smirks, and I'm like, man, he kind of looks like Jim from The Office right now. That took me out of it a little bit. I was like, is Jim Superman? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But overall, I enjoyed his performance. So, unless you have anything else, I think I'm ready to give our overall rating
yeah,
for the
let's
movie.
do it.
So
I'll let you go first.
okay, so for production value, I think it is an incredibly well-produced movie. The set pieces, the CGI, I believed every ounce of the CGI. Even when we're in the Pocket universe, it is believable. It is very well. It's done. It's very crisp. There's not a whole lot of blur going on, which I think sometimes hinders some superhero movies where it kind of gets lost in CGI chaos. So overall, very well produced. Loved the cinematography, the color palette, all of that worked really well.
Yes,
So
yes.
it is going to get an 8 out of 10 for production value for me. Enjoyment, I'm going to go with a 7 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. I just don't know if I loved it. I kind of want to see it again. And I'm also like, I'm not sure if I want to see it again. So like that puts me on the fence of, I think a 7 is good there. It's almost good enough for me to want to see again. I'm just not sure yet. Emotional impact, which is an important category for me. One of our friends makes fun of me all the time for how much I take emotional impact into it. And like I said, there was a majority of this movie that you felt the highs. When the Superman music plays and James Gunn wants you to feel like this is Superman, you feel it. And you feel Lois, and you feel his parents a little bit, but it wasn't as much as I wanted. So emotional impact, I'm gonna go with like a 5. It's
okay.
kind of middling emotional impact for me. Acting, I'm gonna go with a 7 out of 10 again. There were some of the performances that not so sure about, and storytelling. I think the story was really good. The story, Lex's plan that kind of drives the story forward, I think was really well done. The world building part of it, I think distracted from some of the dialogue, and I think it hurt for that. So some of the writing, the script kind of let me down in some ways, but also was really excellent in other ways. So I'm going to go with a 7 out of 10 for the storytelling as well. And so that takes me to a 34 out of 50, which
Okay.
seems low now that I'm saying that. But I think in a thumbs up, thumbs down world, that is still pretty good on the positive side. And it was definitely a thumbs up. I just do think that it had a lot of heavy lifting to do, and I'm not sure it got all the way there. So
Yeah. No.
34 out of 50 for me.
I'm not that far off. And so production value, I gave it a 9, kind of just for all the same reasons that you gave it an 8. Or just like, just a lot of, I mean, shot really well. Love the color palette. Love that soft blue and red
Yep.
color palette that you would just see throughout the movie. Really great choreography with the fight scenes. Everything felt believable. The kite, like you have a kaiju, just giant monster just tearing through the city, and it worked.
Yeah.
It was
Yep.
good. That even the weird jellyfish thing, like even though you never really got up close to it, just it in the
Hmm.
background and like the blue and purple lights just kind of illuminate on their face as they're having this deep conversation. Just everything looked
Right.
visually pleasing. And when he wanted you to know this was Superman, you felt it.
Yep.
And so I give the production value 9 out of 10. Enjoyment 8 out of 10 because I was not expecting to laugh a lot. Like, and
Mm.
there was a lot of bust out laughing moments. Crypto was a great addition. I mean,
Hmm.
there was just so many different moments that was like, okay, this wasn't the tone I was expecting, especially after watching Man of Steel. This wasn't the tone I was expecting from a Superman movie. But with James Gunn, it's kind of what I was like,
Yep.
who would Superman come to James Gunn, or would James Gunn go to Superman? I was like, James Gunn definitely brought Superman a little bit closer to his
Oh, really?
style. That's how that's how I feel.
Okay.
Because
Because I felt like
it,
I felt it was the least James Gunn movie I've seen.
really,
Yes.
with the humor there, the dog,
Yeah.
that whole sequence in the pocket universe, I just felt, and maybe it's me reaching, trying to connect all of these different things, but there
Yeah.
were just so many different things that like, this feels like a Guardians of the Galaxy reference. I remember people
Mm.
making jokes about the sequence in Guardians of the Galaxy 3 with, Adam when he was trying to
Mm.
save his mom and he was doing like and there was like, that looks
Yeah.
like a future Superman sequence, and it very much was.
Yeah.
When you go back and watch it, it's like that's exactly how they choreographed, like they did Superman sequences when he was flying. And
Right.
so um and so
Yeah. I look at the Suicide Squad and I think that's James Gunn turned up to a level 10. It really is.
Really, I didn't
Yeah.
use interesting. I don't use Suicide Squad as like his. I use Guardians of the Galaxy like 1, 2, and 3 as I guess his like
Okay.
as
Because I feel like
his
that's Guardians of
standard.
the Galaxy is like for me is like a 7 out of 10 for James Gunn. Depending on the movie, each one has a little bit of different, but it probably
Yes,
averages out to seven out
yes.
of ten,
I
like
think 3
dialed
was
up.
probably the most him, like, because I think at that
Yes.
point he had the most control and
Mm-hmm.
he was like at the top of his game. So I think that's
Right.
probably the highest.
I see. This was like a 5 or a 6 for me, James Gunn dial. Like we didn't. The
Interesting.
jokes hit and they came at the right. They came at good times, but some of them I was like, oh, that took me out a little bit because that's not like it wasn't as consistent of that's the tone that they're going for because I'm
Hmm.
not sure that Superman handles the James. I think the world handles the James Gunn tone really well. I'm not sure
Yeah.
Superman does. Um,
Interesting.
and so
I can see
I
that.
didn't mean to jump into your rating of the
Because
movie, but that's
the moments were outside of I mean, there were some with Superman, but like
right.
the Justice Game was hilarious. Like
Yes, that was very
their
James Gunn.
Crypto was hilarious.
Hmm.
Everything he did was hilarious, and so so there were just pockets of moment, like there were just moments where he definitely brought his comedy in. Definitely not Guardians of the Galaxy level funny because I was 1 and 2, like I was crying in the theaters
Yeah.
from just some of the lines and dialogue that was coming there. So
Mm.
it was a nice surprise because I just wasn't expecting that in a Superman movie. Emotional impact I put at a 7, just
Okay.
because it's kind of
Yeah.
middle of the tier. It hits on some big themes. It hits on what it means to be kind, what it means to be a human.
Mm.
Lex Luthor and his whole dialogue about fearing others.
Hmm.
And so there's
Yeah, that's
some
true.
real,
That's
even
true.
though we talk about how wacky this world is, there is some real world implications of like caring for other people, treating other
Mm.
people with respect, that I appreciate, that I always appreciate seeing on screen. Because I always feel like
Hmm.
there just needs to be a constant reminder, even as we try to escape these movies and these different
Hmm.
universes, that there's always good, there's always kindness. These are things that we should always hold ourselves true to,
Hmm.
whether we are watching that on television or we're on social media, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll give that a 7 out of 10 because I very much like that. Storytelling, same thing, 7 out of 10. I liked how compact the
Mm.
story was. I liked that it didn't get bigger than itself. I liked that it was, besides the first 10 minutes, relatively easy to follow while still hitting on all of these. Because, like you said, you had the politics, you had the science, you had the
Right.
metahumans all wrapped up in Lex superpowers, and it was understandable. Like it
Right.
wasn't too convoluted. So I'll give them that 7 out of 10. Acting 6 out of 10 for the reasons we talked about. Just not a
Hmm.
lot of acting to really judge. Like
Right.
a lot more action, and just still trying to wrap my head around this world and like the way that they were acting, and like I don't know how intentional it was for them to just come across as so casual in a world that would have a monster just rampaging the city at
Right.
any given moment, and like the Daily Planet and the way that they kind of did things. It was just not really a
Yeah.
lot to really like look at when you look at like a Dark Knight and an Iron Man, where
Right.
there's just and that's not a fair comparison. These are like some of the best acting performances we've seen. But
Right.
but that was like the standard that this movie at one point was trying to be raised to. So like
Right.
the fact that we didn't get to that kind of is a little bummer, but not to the point where it's like the complete opposite of that either.
Yep.
So that puts me at a 37.50, which 37 out of
Okay.
50, which is only 3
Okay.
points higher than you. And
Higher
so
than me. Yeah. I feel like I think that's pretty consistent. And I, it was 2 hours and 9 minutes, and we had a special experience of getting to see it early. So there is some level of, yes, it was worth my time because of that. Uh, and it's just, I'm still struggling 24 hours later on like, do I want to go back to the theater and see it again?
mhm.
And there's part of me that is like, yes, I want more of the Superman. I want more of this Lois. I want more of this Lex Luthor. I want those things. And then there's part of me that goes, yeah, but I also left a little unsatisfied. Do I want to do I want to run the risk of leaving even more unsatisfied because I was right about not having as much of that as I wanted, but yet I still
Mhm.
want it, and I feel like
Yeah.
I feel conflicted about it. And so it was a really good movie. It
Yeah.
was. Uh, it just left me wanting a little bit more when
Mhm.
it comes to those characters.
Yeah, it was. I mean, yeah, it was definitely worth my time. Especially since I got to watch it early and with very little trailers, which Carson can tell you is what makes me
Yep.
happy more than anything, is not having to watch trailers. And so it wasn't 2 hours and 40 minutes where 30 of it was trailers, and
True.
so that was a great experience. But
Yep.
even besides that, like it's worth my time because I am invested in where DCU goes from here, and that like I
Mm.
haven't seen either of the Wonder Womans. There's so many
You
DCU
didn't
movies
watch
that
either of the Wonder Woman
I
movies?
watched the first one, and when I say I watched the first one, I was watching the first one with like a Nintendo Switch in my hand and was like I think it was on at my family's house, and I was playing. I had just gotten my Switch and I was playing on that. So that is my Wonder Woman experience. Still haven't seen the second Wonder Woman. Don't just
Don't
don't have.
waste your time on the second one. The first
And
one
that's
is
what people
good.
have been telling me. That's what people have been telling me. And I just don't like. I
Uh,
just I saw Blue Beetle. Is that what it's called?
yeah,
And
Blue
I
Beetle was
liked it.
good.
Blue Beetle was good, but that was like a one-off thing. Shazam
Right.
was whatever.
Oh, Shazam was good.
Black Adam was one of the worst movie experiences I had in a very long time.
True.
And so it was just like I just didn't care, and now I do care,
Yeah.
and it's I think it's good. I think competition is good, and I know that
Hmm.
these two, I know Marvel and DC, they're in two completely different stages. It's not
Hmm.
a fair comparison. It'll never be a fair comparison
Right.
because of what
No.
MCU has on their side, the
Yep.
time period that they started. Like
Hmm.
DCU is fighting a very uphill battle, but
And
they're.
fighting.
What
Go
was I
ahead.
saying?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and that is hard. So
Hmm.
but they're doing it, and I want to see, like, James Gunn made me curious enough to see what they do with that
Yeah.
and where they go with that, and when they start adding in characters that I am more interested in, which is going to
Mm-hmm.
be Batman, which is going to be that's going to be a really big moment. Like that to me will make or break it.
Yeah.
But once they start adding in Batman, and then they maybe start doing more, we got to see Justice, we got to see a Green Lantern, but are we going to really see a Green Lantern? Like, what is that going to look like? And then
Right.
you start adding all these other characters, Flash,
Yeah.
question mark, and so that is there to where it's like this is worth my time because this is laying down the groundwork for the other movies that I am hoping are going to be worth my time as
Right.
well.
It's a very different fight. It's a very different universe that James Gunn is building. There is, just for some context for those who don't know, the all the old DCU stuff is gone. Henry Cavill's gone. Ben Affleck is gone. Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman is gone. That everything that has come before is gone except for a few key characters Peacemaker is carrying over from James Gunn's Suicide Squad. The Blue Beetle character is supposed to carry over, and Amanda Waller, who is in both Suicide Squad movies and a few other things, played by Viola Davis, is carrying over. Those 3 characters carry over, and then it's a whole new universe. So it's a little complicated if you're not keeping up with those things. And there's also already an entry into the DCU that was an adult R-rated animated TV show on HBO Max called Creature Commandos, which there is a couple characters that are in the Superman movie that were also animated in Creature Commandos. One of the military guys was. And so James Gunn already produced that, which there was a silhouette of Batman at one point. We don't get introduced to the character, but you see him just briefly. And then you have the Superman movie, and then you're going to have Peacemaker Season 2, which again is a James Gunn, heavily James Gunn thing, which I've not seen. It's also very heavily R-rated. And so you're getting a lot more variance in the types of stories and the types of ratings that they're willing to go with, as opposed to Marvel, where it was a huge deal that Deadpool and Wolverine was rated R and a part of the MCU. Yeah. And so it's a very different thing that he's setting up, where some of these stories you're going to watch and some you aren't. And how are people going to keep up with that? Do they need to? It's just going to be a very different thing than the Marvel universe. So it's almost, it's going to be hard to compare the two. I think it might be worth our time to do a DCEU, all the Zack Snyder stuff, the Ben Affleck, Henry Cavill, rank and explain. I think that would be fun to just kind of finally take away all of that stuff, because there's a limited number of movies in that series that I enjoy, but we can do that at a later time. So just for some context for those that are like, what's the DCU? I thought we had that. It's a little complicated, and we're not going to do a DC deep dive like we did an MCU deep dive. I don't think either of us are quite that invested in this set of characters yet. We might be, but it's going to be a lot to keep up with. And I don't mean to scare people with that, because like if I said that to my parents like, should I even go see this? And yes, you should, because it's a good Superman movie. Yeah. And this portrayal of Superman is really probably the most, I don't know, I feel like it's a very accurate, very true depiction of Superman, and you should go see it.
And it would be like the starting point for the journey. Like there are some things already out, like you said, but like this was treated as like the foundation piece. So like this is that Iron Man 2008 experience that like you probably want to be on the front end of that rather than the tail end of that when you're trying to play catch up. So I would recommend as well, because there is no, like you said, like there's no point in having a DCEU deep dive, because none of that is relevant anymore. I mean, it would be good to like reflect on the history of it, but like as far as today, it doesn't matter anymore. It's all gone. Like
it's all gone.
And so there's a whole bunch of Zack Snyder fans still punching the air as we speak. That would be like the deep dive, just talking about that whole following, and that's been fun. And so
I do have thoughts on that. I do have thoughts on that, but that's for another time. Yes. It's for another time.
I'm excited to hear that, because I am the Michael Jackson me eating the popcorn. Like I have because I don't have strong opinions on either side to feel like I'm like equipped to say something, but I'm very interested in the conversation. So that's why it's just like, maybe we'll hold a
funeral for the DCEU, and we'll both dress up in suits and ties, and we'll have a funeral episode for the DCEU where we'll rank and explain and give our opinions on the Snyderverse and the Snyder Cut and Snyder Bros and all this nonsense.
You think I'm writing this down right now. I love this. I'm looking forward to this, and so that is hilarious. Okay. Look at that. This is our meeting on the podcast right here. So
DCEU funeral coming at you. Maybe not next, but soon.
Yeah, we need some time. Yeah, because I still gotta watch like 10 DC 10 half of the movies that I've not watched. I'll hate watch them. So but we'll make it happen.
Sounds good. Well, thank you guys for joining us for this spoiler-filled review of Superman. And we are super excited to hear your guys' thoughts on it. So either talk to us in person, comment in the comments below, let us know what your thoughts are on the movie. And until next time, consume wisely and stay thoughtful.
Thank you for tuning in to the Intake Podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe, rate, and share with your friends. You can watch all of our video podcasts on YouTube at youtube.com/The Intake. You can also follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at The Intake Pod, and share your own intake experience with us via email at intakepod@gmail.com. This podcast is produced by us, Travelle and Carson Miller.